Janet, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me. I'm excited to dive into our topics today.
So I'm looking forward to this as well because we have decided that we're going to talk about empathy in marketing. But before we jump into that, and because you'll do a much better job than I ever will, can you give everyone a little bit of insight into who you are, what you currently do, and how you got here?
Yeah, definitely. So, for everyone listening, I'm Janet Mesh. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Aimtal. So, we're a digital marketing agency. We're based in Boston, but I built the company to be completely remote. So that's been fun. And so my entire team is all over the United States, and we have someone in Europe actually. And we primarily serve B2B companies, and we help them with a range of marketing services. So we really take like an integrated approach to our marketing, helping our clients just in all areas of their online marketing, from social to advertising to website and SEO, content creation. Really like to take like this holistic approach to marketing and applying that in their strategy and everything that we do for them. And of course, like we're going to talk through is how empathy becomes kind of the crux of that strategy. So just a little bit, do you want me to give a little bit of background? Happy to share before we dive in.
Yeah, well, I'm
So,
interested as well. So
okay,
how
cool.
did
Let's
you
do it.
get to the point of founding Aimtal?
Yeah, so I always knew I wanted to work in marketing. I went to school for communications and marketing. Of course, like in the last recession was not the best time to look for a job. So um, my big dream is of course to work for, the really big agencies of the world. And I even got interviews and they were like, yeah, you got to come back to us in 2 years. You don't have the experience. And I was like, well, that's very helpful. So I found myself, I actually got a job at an IT consulting firm. Didn't know anything about IT, tech, B2B, totally new to me. But one thing I didn't know from, university and just my own, like, honestly, like growing up in the internet, like the digital world, was how important social media was. So for that company specifically, I started out as an admin actually, but I saw a lot of opportunity. They didn't have any marketing. They weren't doing anything online. So I started taking on their social, like working really closely with their sales team, which was really fun, and like learning like kind of like the funnel and client services and how marketing is really honestly critical to the success of a sales team. So I worked there for several years and then helped build up their marketing department, and then they got acquired actually. So it was a good time for me to move on. But instead of jumping into another role, I actually took 4 months off and traveled through South America. The classic quarter life crisis.
Love it.
But it was really important because it made me just really get down to what were my priorities and my goals and how I wanted to move forward with my career specifically. And I knew I want to further explore and develop my skills in digital marketing. And then also I want that flexibility of being able to work remote. And of course that was not a thing, like even a year ago in a way, but like 5 years ago, that was not very popular and companies weren't set up that way. So I kind of figured out actually a little bit of a loophole where I could be working with agencies, doing contracting and freelancing and my own consulting. And that started to really take off actually, which was really exciting. And 2 years ago, it got to the point where it was like kind of came to a crossroads again. Like I can just kind of do this on my own, or I can take this to the next level and scale it into a business and pretty much create that agency that I always wanted to work for. So that's what I did. And with my business partner, we started Aimtal 2 years ago, going into our third year. Yeah, so it's been really exciting. Been kind of a crazy wild ride so far.
Yeah, so first and foremost, congrats. Welcome to the crazy life that is starting your own company, starting
Oh,
your own
thank you.
agency, starting your own anything. Because it always seems so beautiful when you're thinking about it and you're planning it out and you map it out and it looks fantastic. And the business plan, that guy has it nailed, right? The guy in the business plan who's going to do this and that's going to watch everything grow and everything's going to be perfect. That's always the nice, easy part. But the reality is often very different. But I'm
Definitely.
interested to ask a couple of questions about why you wanted to be remote, other than the obviously flexibility or freedom to, I'm guessing, lie on the beach occasionally in South America rather than being cold in Boston, for example.
Exactly.
But so were completely remote back in 2016. And my decision was
Right.
based around the fact that Brexit had happened. Everyone kind of lost their shit, excuse the expression. And from there, everything just went mad. And we were just like that. Wow, I don't want offices anymore. I don't want the overheads. And it meant that obviously we're much more agile and flexible in terms of pricing towards clients. So what were some of the driving factors for you to go remotely? And obviously this was before COVID made working from home the norm.
Right.
So what were those driving forces?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's very like aspirational, but when you allow for myself, when I'm allowed to like structure my schedule, and I have like I've learned like my most productive hours just didn't align with the corporate schedule of like sitting in a desk from 8. I would have to be there from like 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. I was like, this is horrible. Just not really into this. Of course, I mean, I definitely probably work more hours now than I did before. But the point of it is that like you have a bit more control of your lifestyle, which I think is, that like kind of aspirational freedom of that. Of course, you're obligated to a bunch of things, but I just really, when I really hated commuting, I didn't like how I had to always like ask where if I wanted to go on a trip, or like like there was no opportunity to like, if you wanted to work remotely, like, tap in and like do things from a different country, like it just wasn't an opportunity. And I really, back then that was important to me, wanting to travel, but not feeling like I had to prevent my career from growing in order to like do the things I want to do in my life as well. But also I think, it's grown, it's kind of diverted into a different direction of how I see like really strong corporate cultures and studying other companies. And the ones that I admire the most are the ones that have like really defined remote work processes and support people remotely. I think if you can do it right, people have stronger work-life boundaries. They can show up every day, like putting in their best effort. You can, you can still connect with people online. Maybe it's not exact. I know people are like, oh, it's not the same as in person, but I actually worked with clients I've never met in person before, or we've worked together for 3 years and we've done like phenomenal work for them and with them, and I hadn't met them in person. And also, I really like, as we're starting to grow as a company, that it doesn't limit us to a specific geographical location, that we can, bring in the best people for our agency from anywhere in the world, honestly. So that's definitely something on like our roadmap for growth, and figuring out like, it really comes down to like best serving our clients. And I don't think it makes sense to have to limit that by just Boston, for example, even though there are a lot of great people in Boston.
I haven't been to Boston yet, so I can't
Oh, you
comment,
gotta
but I'm
come.
sure there
It's
are.
pretty similar to London, actually, if that makes, obviously, since they came on the Mayflower all the way to here.
By it's very similar to London, you mean it's very cold right now?
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Well, listen, we won't get too into the traveling and the remote stuff, but I am a huge fan of that. So I think that's brilliant. Very quickly, though, I'm going to have to ask this because I do go off in tangents, obviously. But you mentioned South America. So favorite country you traveled around South America? Go.
Chile.
Fantastic. Any reason in particular?
Yeah, it was the first place I went to. My partner his whole family's from there, and it's honestly just a beautiful country. There's so many different landscapes. The people are so like warm and inviting. The food is phenomenal. I never even knew that Chilean cuisine was a thing. Huge like wine culture. It honestly has it all. It's really it's a hidden gem for sure. So I highly recommend people go check it out. You definitely need to know a bit of Spanish, I would say, but you can get by for sure.
I've got to be honest, when you said the wine culture, I swear you just smiled that little bit more than you were smiling beforehand.
It's so good.
Okay,
Yeah, the landscape's similar to California, so
nice. Well, listen, okay, let's talk a little bit about marketing because I think that's
yeah,
why
let's do
people
it.
listen to this show, and we don't want to get completely lost. So we did say at the beginning of this that we want to talk about empathy in marketing, and I think this is something that can often be misunderstood by people. Pretending to be empathetic towards somebody in order to, in other words, emotionally blackmail them into buying something isn't what we're actually talking about here. But we do often on this show, and often with the guests, we end up talking about the idea of, understanding your audience. And a lot of people break that down into the statistical side of things, right? Demographics, age, gender, whatever it might be that will help them to target ads. But actually, when it comes to empathy, we're talking about a whole other level. Do you want to give people like a basic breakdown of what that
Yeah,
means to you?
definitely. So I'll start with the definition of empathy. So it's the capacity to understand or feel what another person is experiencing from within their frame of reference. And that's like the capacity to place your own, like yourself into their position. And to your point, Chris, which I wholeheartedly agree with, is of course, yeah, that data is really important, demographics, but it only tells so much about someone, and it's a bit like stereotypical, I found, with those data points. So really what we do at clients is really starting with the questions always like, who's your customer currently? And are they your ideal customer, or is there someone else that you think is like a better fit for your product or service? And how we start to really hone into that and understand is more on this like emotional side, actually, and like kind of tapping into this person's worldview. So, and of course, we use data to inform this. I'll get into that a little bit. But really, what the first step is asking, what are some of the pains that they're experiencing? Typically, maybe we can say specific to like their job. So some of their pains could be like they're having a hard time impressing their boss. Like that's something that if you start thinking like, okay, if they can't impress their boss, then like what can we provide to them via content or information or some sort of like product or service solution that can help them, impress their boss in their job. um, and then and then that brings you into like, okay, let's identify what the solution is. But it's also important to understand like what's happening in their world, like what are some of their like desires and goals. And pretty much like it's really just asking these questions and just trying to put yourself in that person's like in their shoes, really. And then um the part of it that I think is interesting is so a lot of businesses, of course, if you own a business, like your whole world is all about your business. But for your customer, it can honestly just be 5 minutes of their day. And I think that can be really disheartening to people, but it also, I see it as like empowering, because like if you can just change like 5 minutes of one person's day and really come up with a solution around that, then they're going to start to become loyal. It's like, wow, you just like, you helped me there. Like, thank you. I don't even need to worry about that pain. You alleviated it for me, or I'm a little bit happier. Like there's so much going on in everyone's lives and day to day. So that's where we like to start, of really understanding like what's going on in their lives, like what, and trying, of course you want to try to make it broader so you can, reach more people, but there's not something wrong with going a little bit granular.
I think that's huge as well, because you are right. And also, as business owners, I am definitely, I won't say we are because you might not agree. I have definitely been guilty of spending way too much time looking inwardly on occasions, and for what seems like the biggest possible thing in your day or week or month or year, even as a business. Like you mentioned, can literally be the choice between clicking a button or not clicking a button for somebody else. And actually, they don't care. They've moved on to the next thing.
Right.
And we have to kind of be a little dispassionate with certain parts of the business sometimes, so we have to remind ourselves to be. But actually, at the same time, that's where the empathy comes into it, right?
Definitely. Exactly. Um, and I think what I've noticed, and it sounds like pretty, taking a customer centric approach, like bringing like humanizing like your services, products, and your brand. Like I think that a lot of people do understand that at the high level, which is great. But what it comes down to is almost like putting in checkpoints during as you're like developing strategies and actually doing marketing, and like as you're reflecting and analyzing what's working and what's not for your audience. Because I've seen a lot, and we're all susceptible to this, and everyone loves to we love to dive into the data, especially B2B and tech, which is like our industry. It's all about the data and like driving every decision with data. I'm like, I actually don't agree with that. I think that we should use the data to inform it, because at the end of the day, even if it's business to business, we're still human to human marketing. And but of course the data, like it informs everything, but at the same time, it's really important, and it can just be the simple act of asking like, who's our customer? Like, who are we actually speaking to here? Are we spent like 2 months working on this project or this campaign? Did we like veer off from like that goal and like who we're actually trying to like connect with? Like, are we still aligned to that? I think like some periodic checkpoints as people, going into the new year and developing out your content strategies and your marketing strategies, like having those little checkpoints and like almost putting them into your timeline can kind of keep you moving forward with this empathetic approach and making sure that you're always having your customer and your audience in mind in everything that you create.
It is something that happens quite easily, and we can get distracted very easily by, ooh, shiny new tool. I know, I'll go create some content using this.
Right.
And invariably, if you then look at the content, which usually doesn't perform very well, unless you got very lucky, you then kind of look at it and go, why didn't that work? And you think, well, actually, because it's got absolutely nothing to do with who we're trying to talk to or what we're trying to talk to them about. And we're not talking to them in the right way. And I think that's
Right.
something that's really important for businesses, especially small businesses. Time, resources in general, money, whatever it might be, is short. It's in short supply for most small companies. And I think we can get distracted quite easily by shiny new things and forget that actually the number one question is, like you said, whether it's in your timeline to sort of check in with yourself, but if not, every single piece of content before you start creating it, who are we making this for? Are we making it for our
Exactly.
ideal customer? Does it help them? And if so,
Hmm.
how? And then basically when you finish the piece of content, ask yourself the same set of 4 questions before
Right.
releasing it.
Yeah. I actually pulled the questions. We have like a guide on this a bit, and uh so Google actually has like specific questions around content that you should be asking yourself when you create something. So I think this will be helpful for your audience too. And we have this in a checklist. So because what you want to do, especially with the content, you always want to create it with the person in mind. Of course, you want to rank and increase traffic. That's a big goal, but Google knows if you're trying to hack it, and they'll knock you for it. So some of the questions that they like ask you to ask yourself, which I love, are: does your content provide original information, like research and analysis? Is this the sort of page you want to bookmark, share with a friend, or recommend? I love that one. It's like, is someone actually going to take an action from this? Um, was it well produced? Of course, is important. Um, I like this one as well. It's like, does the content present information in a way that makes you want to trust it? Like things like that, where it's like, they're really taking this like human approach to recommending like how we are also writing content and sharing information. And I think that's also a part of like where empathy, like the cousin to empathy, is like the helpfulness of content, and really just wanting to help people and educate them, and providing solutions, and always using that as a guiding light. I believe, ends in the right result for your business.
I think it's true. Again, being human, you mentioned it earlier on, B2B, B2C, forget about it. There's two people, there's two real human beings that, by the way, all have the same good days, bad days that we have. They have the same problems, whether it be in relationships, with friends, with their boss, with whatever it might be, or just the commute into work that put them in a bad mood on that day. We all have these kind of issues. And ultimately, there's nothing worse than doing stuff for the sake of doing stuff. And we've
Right.
talked to clients about this so often, oh, we're on every single channel on social media. And I'm like, that, why?
Oh yeah.
Why?
Oh man. Yeah. Oh.
This seems like I've hit a nerve
Like,
for
is
you.
your
So I'm going to
audience
hand over
there?
to you.
Like, yeah, we do that too. Of course, you think you need to be on all channels, but specifically for like our clients, the most effective channels are LinkedIn and Twitter for B2B. Sometimes actually Instagram, which is interesting, but we, yeah, actually a lot of the time in our strategy, we'll recommend that they even like take down like their Facebook page or things like that. And they're like, what do you mean? And you're like, because you're putting in energy where you're not going to get any return, and your audience isn't there. They don't care.
It's a tough one, though. But, and again, I think
It is.
we're badly taught because everyone is basically everywhere. And what
Hmm.
people don't really realize is if you go back and look at those people, they started somewhere, they had a big audience, then a new platform came along and they took their audience with them. And basically, a
Right.
lot of these audiences are following. So, somebody who follows Gary Vee probably follows him on Twitter, Facebook, Insta, LinkedIn, and you're like that.
Right.
Yeah, across all these channels, but it's not the audiences necessarily that they started with or the one that they built originally. And that's where it really counts. And again, I prefer to work hard on 2 platforms rather than 12 platforms. And
Exactly.
now, especially, actually, I do find recently I'm getting to the point where there's a little bit of annoyance on my side, I won't lie. But every platform now has various multiple angles and different types of content. So
Yep.
you can't physically keep up. It's impossible.
Exactly.
You have to start making hard choices, binning certain sides of it, or if not, then completely changing what you're going to do. So for us as an agency, for example, Instagram has been useless. As an
Mhm.
agency, we don't really create great content for it. I'll be honest, we share what we're up to, what we're doing. And now we're just going to give up doing anything other than just behind the scenes videos of this is our setup, this is what we're doing, this is what we're filming, this is how we edit, or stuff like that. which has no impact on us getting clients. We know that. We're just literally doing it so that we can keep an Instagram presence alive, hopefully share some ideas for other people to use. But the reality is people are going to have to start making those decisions, because it's going to be
Right.
impossible unless you're a big multinational with lots of staff to
Right.
be able to post, stories, feed, reels, Instagram videos.
Exactly. Guides.
Yeah, like you're already in like 8 different versions of one particular piece of content, and you've got to do that now multiplied by 3 or 4, 5 channels. It's just
Right.
going to become impossible.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. I totally. And and that's what it comes down to, is like, is your audience even on those channels? Like, is that where they hang out? Like, that's almost a question. It's like, where are they hanging out online? Where are they talking? And I love to use social media just to start exploring where these people are and where they're, asking questions or sharing ideas. I feel like I'll always be like partial to Twitter, but Twitter, you can get like a lot of interesting, like, people are really honest, but it's also like a little bit more professional, where people sharing opinions and ideas. So that's like, it's a cool place to kind of start like understanding your audience as well. I'll be curious, Chris, actually, if with your Instagram strategy, how it evolves, because I think that showing that human side of, and that behind the scenes of your company will actually, it'll be interesting to see what audience does follow and maybe what you can create from that. It'll be
I,
cool.
I have a bad feeling that it'll degenerate quickly. And
I
it'll be
think you'll be
100% my fault. So it'll go from sort of me trying to show a nice new setup behind the scenes, and then it'll suddenly go to me just sipping coffee going, oh, this has just happened. But
Yeah, but that it comes back to like that like real experience. It's actually cool on social, specifically with brands. They're kind of opening the hood a little bit, where it's like a little bit more of a personality, and it's it almost feels like a human, which sounds strange, but I really like the way that things are shifting, where brands are becoming more of themselves, and companies, and like kind of owning like their own identity, and like speaking with their own personality online. Like the big brands, like kind of like McDonald's does it well. Like they'll even talk sometimes in the first person, which is a little strange, but some of the content does really well.
yeah, to be fair, actually, in the UK, I don't know who's in charge of it, but the Kentucky Fried Chicken Twitter
Yeah,
account is
exactly.
phenomenal. And I
Yeah,
mean,
Wendy's here in the US is
phenomenal.
really good. Like those ones are, the other one that's been pretty, obviously TikTok is good on TikTok and all that, but their Twitter account is hilarious. I was like reading and like looking, analyzing it last night. I highly recommend checking out. It's pretty funny.
We'll add a link into the show notes in case anyone's geeky like us and actually finds that kind of interesting. Okay, cool. So we're getting away from the subject of trying to identify and trying to understand what people are going through. And I think that's the key thing here as well. We're not just talking about who the audience is. We're not talking about the demographics, but how do you help people to try and figure this out? And I'm guessing it's linked to the fact that we've just talked a little bit about researching, where are people asking questions, what sort of questions are they asking. But what the reality is you're really trying to understand what they're going through, aren't you, when you're doing that? So what are some of the ways that small businesses can do that?
Yeah, I think the first one is like, of course, sometimes what I find with my clients is, and our clients, is that they actually know a lot about their customer, their ideal customer. They just need someone to kind of draw it out of them. So we really will start with the like the business owner or whomever we're working with internally, to ask like a ton of questions about their audience. And it's really great too if you can have, if they have a sales team, and speaking to them, just getting some like anecdotal accounts and like their own data or just like information. I like to start there. We send like a whole like questionnaire, honestly, with like a variety of questions to kind of drill into like pain points and solutions and offerings. And then the next step is definitely, if you already have these customers, just ask them. It can be kind of intimidating. But that's where it can be, it's nice if you, with the sales team, if they, if they have like a good understanding, that they can provide a lot of like information of, oh, they brought this up as like a pain point on the call, or like this is why they didn't want to move forward with us. You can learn a lot from those conversations and notes and data points there. So definitely, like, if it's great if a client even already has like customer stories or quotes, because you can kind of pull that out. But that always obviously kind of talks a little bit to like the great things, and you want to understand kind of like the bad things as well, the good and the bad. That's where the research comes in as well. We're looking at I love to use social, honestly, like as a research tool, like I mentioned. Just searching like keywords or like information, like kind of trying to tap into say if it's around like a specific like service, I'm trying to think of an example. So if you were trying to like understand like who like an ideal like customer of let's say like Salesforce, because they just acquired Slack, and you're like, okay, like I want to kind of explore more of like who our ideal like client could be that's like related to like the Salesforce industry, and you're trying to like tap into like identify like more Salesforce developers, for example, because like they're your target audience. Like that's where you can go into like LinkedIn or Twitter and try to find those people online. They're actually, pro tip, they're really active on Twitter. So you just kind of just trying to get an entrance into their world and like reading and understanding what they're talking about, and and maybe not even like just specific to that specific their job, but even going on their profiles and understanding like what else are they like interested in terms of books or people that they follow or things like that. I don't think you need to spend like hours and hours of it, because I do also think a lot of it comes down to just starting to like test on your own with in social. I keep coming back to social, but it's such a great way to like test all these ideas. You can start putting out like posts and seeing like who engages. We like to do like polls and seeing like who's going to interact and going to respond and like and comment, and analyzing and using that data to inform what people actually are engaging with.
There's like
I hope I answered that question.
I don't know, but there's like 3 or 4 things that I'm going to try and pick up on and see if I remember them all. The first one that you mentioned, talk to your customers.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how important and easy that is as a win. If somebody currently pays you or has recently paid you money, then they will happily jump on a call with you. So picking up the phone, having that phone call and saying, hey, just like to talk to you about X, Y, and Z. And we actually posted something about this, funny enough, on our LinkedIn company page for the agency a little while ago. And one of our clients read it, reached out, and basically what we had said was really simple. You're not sure what content to create. Ask your clients what they're struggling with. That was it. Like, what's the biggest problem that you're having right now? What's that? Just ask your clients. And one of our clients basically had gone out completely independent. She'd seen this post, went out, spoke to all her clients, came back, had 12 articles that she was planning on writing based purely on feedback from customers that she had spoken to, was super happy about it, posted this list of these 12 articles, and then tagged us in it saying,
That's amazing.
thanks to Chris and James talking about this, I've gone out and done it now. I know what my next 12 blogs will be about. And I was
amazing.
like, that's it right there. That's how hard it is to create content. It took her, I think, an email out to a few select people with a couple of questions being asked. People came back with answers. She collated them. Done. You now know everything that you need to do for the next couple of weeks, months, whatever you want to do to create content.
And the next thing she can do is like take one of those questions, put it in Google, and see what the related search questions are, and get even more content.
Yeah, and literally and if you start going onto the idea of that and then go into your keyword research, like you said, relating keywords to that, and then figuring out what the next stages are afterwards, and also seeing what other content is actually out there. How have other people done it? Are there lots of videos? Are there YouTube videos with hundreds of thousands of views because people are searching for this on a regular basis? Whatever it might be. But it all started with something that was so simple. And it, again, people get lost in this, I'm B2B, I'm B2C, whatever it might be. You're not. There's a human being on the other end of the phone, and what they struggle with might not necessarily have anything to do with how you think you're selling your product.
Exactly.
In fact, actually, if you've never spoken to your clients, the chances are you're going to find out that most people are buying it for a completely different reason than you thought originally.
Right.
And that's crazy, but that is the way it happens. That's the way these things go. So I think that's a really, really useful thing to do. And again, I'm now trying to remember what the other couple of things that you had mentioned were. Going on to stuff like Twitter as well, figuring out what people are into. The reason for that, and I think it is really important, people who are like people and like-minded people. And again, I'm not going to put them into brackets or anything else. You mentioned developers. I'm the first to put my hands up. I am super geeky. I love smart home stuff. I love computer stuff. I love programming stuff. I like all sorts of crap to do with this. I enjoy it. It's part of me. But the chances are that other people have similar secondary interests to what I do as well. So by looking into what these guys are into and what they're doing, you're also going to learn what publications they read, what publications they share. All of those sort of things are going to start to give you insights as to, well, hang on a second, what would it take for me to be on that particular website? Or if that's the one that keeps coming up and that seems to be a firm favorite, or what actually are the things that I have in common with some of these people, on top of the fact that we both sell programming, we both sell marketing, whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what's really important. And I think a lot of people ignore that element, and it can be hard sometimes because LinkedIn feels a little bit like it's a bit too sterile for some people.
Hmm.
Whereas, myself and my business partner, James, we create videos that go out almost on a weekly basis. It's literally just him and I on a Zoom chat doing this, but
Right.
no filters really. Not much editing other than clipping the start and the end and then publishing it. And we actually use that as part of our conversation with clients going, before you decide to work with us, check out some of our videos and make sure that you like the kind of people that we are, because
Right.
we're not, we're
You're
not
not
that
going to hide
big
it.
agency. Yeah, we're not that big agency. We're not, those hugely professional, smart, always in a suit and tie. In fact, I basically live in hoodies
Yeah. Oh
these
yeah.
days. And like it literally is.
That
But
could be a
again,
remote work benefit, working in sweatpants. Because like,
absolutely,
I don't think it's a bad thing. It's actually like, you got to be comfy in life. Like,
absolutely. I'm wearing jeans. I won't lie, but that's only because I had to go out earlier. But it is true though. People like people who are like people. We want to have stuff in common. We want to work with people and do it in a nice way, in a friendly way, in a way that feels like there's more of a relationship than you pay me to do X. Once that's done,
exactly.
end X. We don't talk ever again. And I think that's something that's really important. And a lot of people overlook that. And it's also another great way into the insight of what those people are actually going through. You'd be amazed what people will share, the struggles that they're
Right.
having, or the problems that they're having, or things that they're trying to find out, or questions they're asking their own community. All of these things give you massive amounts of insight. And again,
For
to come
sure.
back to the idea of this empathy side of things, that's what you're really looking for.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just like, what's their worldview? Like, what are they, like, desires, their goals, and it doesn't, I think like people could probably feel overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, that's so much for me to do, but try to find like one little nugget of information that, you can start building that connection and, creating some content around it and communicating to them about how you can solve that for them, or, how your business can help. Really coming back to that helpfulness is huge. And that's what people are, like, kind of using online, like the online world for, is just looking for answers and looking for connection.
Well, it's literally why Google is a verb, right?
Exactly.
It sounds terrible, but there it is. It's literally there in front of you. Just start typing in what you think your clients will type in without having to go onto a fancy SEO keyword platform or
Exactly.
anything else,
Yeah,
and
there's a
start
lot you can
seeing what
do.
comes up and what's actually being found, and realize, hang on a second, maybe I'm doing this all wrong, or maybe that's not actually the reason that they're looking for things. Maybe they're looking for solutions rather than
Yeah.
products, for
Or
example.
maybe you're doing it right and it just validates that you're crushing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you are, I mean, that's fantastic, right? It's even better,
Exactly.
especially when it happens by accident.
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
Okay, so what are some of the key ways then that you think small businesses can try to do their best to be empathetic when it comes to their actual content that's going out?
Yeah, I think, just kind of round up what we've touched on in terms of taking a little bit of time, in your schedule or with your team, of that, like, reflection is really important, and trying to, like, ask, like, okay, like, are we, like, who is our, like, our customer, like, who, like, are is it the customer we have now exactly the customers that we want, and getting pretty, like, specific of what you like, who they are. Like, we even have like a ideal versus non-ideal, like, customer presentation for ourselves internally to, like, use as like a guideline. And I think that's, like, really helpful to, like, so that you can, like, identify red flags or green flags or so on. And then, of course, definitely talking, if you have those customers, speaking to them is really important. Doing that on sales calls, or, if you have, whenever you have meetings, and maybe, like, asking the right questions and just preparing a little in advance to gather that information. And then, of course, just using good old internet, where you can, on social and Google, and just start kind of searching and understanding, like, what people are talking about or what they're searching for, and tailoring things around that. Just try to kind of pull out those nuggets of where you can align yourselves to your ideal customer and audience.
So I have to ask you about this because this is something that I really believe in. And again, you're ticking a lot of green flags, but unfortunately, you're not a client. But the key thing there you mentioned is that actually knowing who your ideal client is one thing, and actually knowing who you're not ideal. I think you were really, really polite when you said it like that. Um, yeah, what your not ideal client looks like, what those red flags are that you must pay attention to, because every time you feel that there is that red flag, but you let it slide and you work with those people, I
Oh yeah.
guarantee you, because I have done this time and time again. And then you realize, no, never, ever, ever again will I work with somebody when X happens or Y happens. When one of those red flags is triggered, it's a sign you have to take it into
Exactly.
consideration. And we basically referred to it recently in a series of content that we pushed out, which was literally only work with people who bring you joy.
I love
Like
that.
for us, full stop, flat out. If we talk to someone and it feels like it's going to be a bore, we're like that. Cool. We'll introduce you to some other people.
Exactly. Yeah, have some referrals in your back pocket because they may be a good
Absolutely.
fit for someone else. Yeah, I love that joy one. I do it as like, are they going to like, what's the energy level? Are they going to just suck all of our energy, or are they going to like really like pump us up, like working with them?
Do you look for things like, so what sort of things in particular? You know, you've mentioned the energy, but what are some of the things like you look at, you've got to be really careful now as well that you don't upset existing clients or anyone who's just recently been fired by you and doesn't know the real reason. But
No, I mean, I think the biggest one that anyone could agree to, you know, any business owner would be, or if you're trying to like land a client or a customer, is they're just like, oh, well, we just don't have a budget. It's like, okay, that's great. Hopefully you can work towards that, but our services require payment.
I
So I
don't
think
work
that's a
for free.
yeah, I mean, I think that sometimes there's like obviously sticker shock, and it's like, well, if you want the like, you know, people come to us and they're like, I want what you're doing for that company. And it's like, okay, great. Like we would love to help and talking through it, but then, you know, there's it's an investment. So that's definitely a big one. Companies actually, so what has been really interesting to discover is if they believe in remote work,
Nice.
if they you know, appreciate, or they, I don't know, it's just like it's interesting like how kind of like the working world is like evolving even more so because of, and how much it's advanced because of coronavirus. But really like are, you know, are they willing to like come on Zoom and like respect that this kind of like new way of working, or are they really resistant to it? Because if they're really resistant to it, like we're not going to change our business model, we're always going to be remote. So if it doesn't work out that way, then it's not going to be a good client relationship. You can't really deliver well to them.
No, I agree with you. And anyone who says to you, yeah, no, I think it'd be best if you came to my office, we're like that. Bye. Like, I hope it
Exactly.
works out for you.
It's like
Peace
we can go
out.
to dinner, but I don't want to go to your office.
Even dinner, to be honest with you now, at the moment, you're like that.
That's true. I would not be. Yes, that's exactly.
But to be fair, though, I do think it's important because a lot of people do underestimate the value of recognizing what those red flags are. And again, it can be hard sometimes to identify who your ideal client is, but
Hmm.
I'll guarantee you every business owner out there can tell you one, two, three horror stories
Yeah,
really easily with bad clients that were just awful, toxic.
right.
And people don't realize that the stress and energy that you put into that actually takes away from anything else that you could possibly do that is productive. You
For
don't
sure.
realize it at the time. You think, well, it's just a bad patch. But actually, all the time that you're dealing with that bad patch, you're not finding new, amazing, awesome, energy giving clients.
Exactly.
And you're just going down and down and deeper into the dark rabbit hole.
Yeah, and as a business owner as well, it's not even just, you know, growing the business and you know, serving our clients, but it's also protecting my team. You know, it's my responsibility to protect their energy and making sure that they can perform their best. And if we're working with, you know, clients that just aren't a fit, they're not going to be able to do their best work either, and that's going to affect their performance and mental health and everything.
Yeah, everyone wants to be in a good mood. And if whilst
Oh, I thought
everyone's in
of
a
one
good mood,
more. I don't know if I can should I share it, but I will.
do it, do it.
One okay, one that I think is important, maybe everyone can identify is someone I've noticed, like if someone is questioning your like expertise or doesn't take you like necessarily seriously, and that isn't actually like, if you're recommending like certain strategies, because like for me, I'm like, I know that these work, I've like developed them or I've tested them, I've helped companies be acquired for multi-million dollars, like I know that it works. And then when it comes to these conversations where they're constantly questioning it, then I know that it's not a good fit anymore, because they just don't either one understand. I don't know. It could be a range of things, right? But that's always for me in a relationship or even before, that can be a red flag. So hopefully some people can take that and use it as their own.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I always kind of refer to that as the value. What
Hmm.
value do they see in what you're talking about? And I think it works for everybody. As soon as somebody goes, yeah, 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 sorry, Janet, yeah, but no, what we want to do, and you're like that, all right, you don't need me. Carry on.
Exactly.
You don't see
Yeah.
a value in this. You think you know everything. You've already got this plan in mind. And something that is very hard with social media, and I've dealt with this. So I've been running Social Link now for just over 12 years. And ever since the beginning of Facebook business pages, which were awesome and fun at the time because they just grew like that. But those days are gone. But the idea was really simple. We'd literally have conversations with people and they'd be like that. Yeah, but my son, Jimmy, is on Facebook, so he's going to deal with this. And you're like that. And good luck to Jimmy. What do you want me to say to that? Or, my cousin's nephew's boy is in university, so he's going to run our Twitter account. And you're like that. Yeah, that seems solid. I think Coca-Cola is doing
Right.
the same thing. And literally,
It's
like,
so
you
true.
have those conversations. So we've had the same thing now, and it's become slightly different now, but it's very much the same thing. I found somebody on Fiverr or who write me 20 tweets for $50. I'm like, that cool, man, you got it sorted. Go for it. That sounds awesome. I could never match that price. I would charge you
Right.
far more than that. So
Right.
carry on. Good luck. Hope it works out. Let me know if you need anything. And again, it's
Exactly.
always coming back to that idea of value. And I think you can push that back into any organization if you're in consulting services or even equipment. If people are asking for discounts and they want cheaper and they want something that's not going to be any value really, you don't really want to work with them because they're going to buy an inferior product. It's not going to do what they want them to do. And ultimately, they're going to blame you
Mhm.
regardless whether your service is the best in the world, the worst in the world, doesn't make any difference. They'll blame you because they have an expectation of what it should be. They don't see the value in what it actually is, and what they're going to try and pay you and what they're going to get out of it
Totally.
isn't going to be the right thing. So
Mhm.
everyone ends up losing.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think any business can take some lessons from that, and just try to really like hone in of those, like make a list, honestly, pros and cons. Nothing like a good old pros and con list.
And then just throw all the bad clients in the cons and throw them out. Um, right. Before we wrap up, Janet, what's your favorite social channel for you personally?
Oh, I would say, I don't
I
know, like I said
guess
in the beginning,
Twitter.
Twitter's always been like my number one, but Instagram as well for like personal. I like all like friends and family are on there. Definitely, yeah. Twitter and Instagram are my top for sure.
Is Instagram, are you a poster or a voyeur?
I'm a story poster. I
Okay.
don't post much on the feed as I used to. Obviously, I used to be a big traveler, so I can't do that this year. So my content's pretty lame. But um, yeah, in stories, I like to post more of like kind of like the like day to day or on the weekends and things like that. It's kind of funny though. You maybe identify with this, and anyone working in marketing and social is like, we do so much of it for clients that at the end of the day or the end of the week, I don't really want to be spending more time on those platforms. I have been definitely trying to put a little bit more of a boundary of like the digital and physical world. So
It's quite nice to just pick up a physical book for a while and not
yeah,
look at your phone for a bit.
for sure. Exactly.
Awesome. Janet, where can people find you online to get in touch with you and how?
Yeah, so you can go to aimtal.com, that's AIMTAL.com, or you can just search Janet Mesh on any social channel, primarily, Twitter, Instagram, definitely LinkedIn on a professional level if you'd like to connect there. And then, of course, you can follow Aimtal on all channels as well.
Fantastic. We'll add all of those links to the show notes. Janet, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Chris. This is awesome. Appreciate it.